So welcome everyone today to our webinar, first of the year, on implementing the Seniors Anti-bullying Toolkit in seniors residence. I'm so pleased today to be collaborating with our colleagues at Sheridan College in regards to this project, and they're going to give us a lot more information and details around anti-bullying for seniors and the toolkit that they have been implementing and the work that's been done to date. So before we begin, I would like to provide our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we gather on the traditional territory of a number of First Nations and acknowledge their stewardship of this land throughout the ages. We seek a new relationship with the original peoples of this land, one that is based in honor and deep respect. A few housekeeping items before we get going today. Everyone's microphones are muted. We do have, as I say, many people that will be joining us today, but we do encourage you to have conversations in the chat box. If there's comments that you would like to contribute, or if you have a question specifically, we do ask that you direct that to the Q&A box that you'll see on the bottom of your screen. That will make sure that we don't miss your question, and we'll ask that of the speakers at the end of the presentation. As I mentioned, we do have ASL interpreters with us today. As you see on their screen, they will switch on and off during the presentation. I've mentioned you can enable closed captioning on your own screens as well if you would like to follow with both the interpreter and the closed captioning. You do also have the option to change the size of the screen of the people on your screen and the presentation. There's a line between the speakers, so you can change the sizing between the speakers and the presentation, or you can change the view at the top. There's a little grid box that you can change to the view that you would like, if it's just speakers, or the gallery view for all people on the screen. It will be a little bit less than speakers. I will go off screen, as well as my colleague Lisa, after we begin the presentation, so you will be able to just focus on the actual presenters for today. Just as a reminder, we are recording this session. It will be posted on our website, hopefully by end of day or by tomorrow, along with all the materials that are shared in our chat box with you, as well as what's been shared with me by the speakers, and anything that we also see relevant that's posted in the chat box, maybe by others, that we can share with individuals who want to see the recording afterwards. And as usual, we will be asking for people to do an evaluation, and we'll send you that survey link as well, just to get some quick input on your feedback for today and other topics that you might see relevant for us to host in the future. Takes at least 15, maybe 30 seconds of your time, but it really does help us in our future engagement. And just lastly, before we begin, just understanding that these are public forums, and we do appreciate people's privacy and confidentiality. So if you do have a particular situation that you want further assistance with or input, please reach out to EAPO, and we will be pleased to assist you. My contact information will be available at the end of the presentation, and you can reach out to us directly for that. And for those who are just joining us for the first time, who don't know much about our organization, Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario is a provincial nonprofit organization. Our mission is to ensure all seniors are free from abuse, have a strong voice, and feel safe and respected. And we implement that strategy, again, provincially, and we also are mandated to implement Ontario's strategy to combat elder abuse. And we have actually been working on that strategy, and which was implemented in the year 2020. And we are now funded under the Ministry for Seniors and Accessibility. Through the past years of the strategy, we have three main pillars that we work under. And I have to say, since I've been here since the inception of the strategy, we have many activities that fall under each of these domains. And they've grown over the number of years, as you can imagine. The first is public education and awareness. We do a lot of outreach to seniors in the community. involved in a lot of public educational campaigns on elder abuse prevention, ageism, aging with rights. We'll have World Elder Abuse Awareness Day coming up in June. And we are on social media, all platforms, to expand our awareness and education to the public. We do a lot of training to frontline providers in all sectors. And again, over the years, that's really expanded in terms of those groups that we provide services to, from social workers to paramedics to policing, banking officers, you name it, we're kind of out there in the domain. And then lastly, we work with our community partners because, as many of you know, we can't do this work alone. We have to work in collaboration to develop a coordinated response to elder abuse. So many projects, such as the one that we're going to be talking about today, that we do collaboration on to look at how we can better respond to elder abuse, which you'll learn more about today. Which brings me to our great presenters that I have the privilege of introducing. I'll begin with Kirsten Madsen. She is a faculty member at Sheridan College. She received her PhD in developmental psychology at the University of Sheffield in England. Specifically, her graduate work at the university was on anti-bullying, and she went on to assess what anti-bullying strategies were being implemented in school or by schools in England. She conducts research on and does training with frontline providers on bullying, aggression, age differences, gender differences, and program development. She currently is the project director for this Seniors Anti-bullying project that we'll hear about today. And that project is, as she will mention, is a collaboration between the Sheridan College, Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario, and the Bob Rumble Canadian Centre of Excellence for the Deaf. And she will talk about how that was funded. And joining her today is her colleague, Dorothy Rodrigues. She is a registered social worker and community development practitioner. She's currently the facilitator for the project. Dorothy's research interests include older adults and community building. Along with her strong background in the arts, she weaves art projects into many of the older adult community building activities that she does. She's also co-published with Facilitators and Barriers to Mentoring Newcomers to Canada project. That project's aimed on how newcomers to Canada can be assisted by older, more experienced Canadians in the workforce. So welcome, both of you. It's a pleasure to see you again and collaborate and let people know where we are at in terms of this project itself. So I'm going to stop my screen, and Kirsten, are you going to share your screen?
Yep. So, is the screen, I thought it was, can you put the screen back, Rayanne?
Sorry.
Or do you want me to?
Nope, that's fine. Sorry.
Okay. So, thank you very much, Rayanne, and it's good to see you again. As Rayanne had said, we're going to be presenting on the implementation of the Seniors Anti-bullying Toolkit that has begun and provide you with an update. This is part of the larger Seniors Anti-bullying project, which is a partnership between Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario, the Bob Rumble Canadian Centre of Excellence for the Deaf, and Sheridan College. And we're working with 8 seniors residences in order to implement and evaluate a toolkit that was designed to prevent and target bullying behavior between older adults. Right from the get-go, before I go further, you're going to see that we're using the term bullying behavior because the focus is on the behavior and not labeling people as bullies or victims or targets. Instead, the focus is on the behavior. What we're going to be presenting today is implementing the Seniors Anti-bullying project. So the bullying toolkit and seniors and update. Today's objectives, so on the next slide, you can see the objectives for today's webinar are as follows. You're going to be getting an overview of the Seniors Anti-bullying Toolkit. Now, the last time we did the webinar was actually March 13th, 2020, when we launched the toolkit. We all know what happened that day. Everything sort of locked down. So we're going to carry on from that particular presentation, but there will be a brief overview of the Seniors Anti-bullying Toolkit. Special considerations that are given to this population. So when we're actually implementing the toolkit and in developing it, we're going to be talking about implementing and evaluating the toolkit, where we are in the trajectory so far, some of the lessons we've already learned, because even though it's early days of the implementation project, we are learning a lot. Hence why we wanted to start sharing this information as soon as possible so the entire community can benefit from what we're learning from as well. Also, we've already started to make modifications to the toolkit. Now, before we get started, we need to always actually give a definition for what bullying is between older adults. And I'll hand that over to Dorothy.
Thanks, Kirsten. So what is seniors bullying? Bullying is sometimes called harassment and happens when someone hurts, intimidates, or scares a peer consciously or unconsciously. When someone is being bullied, they often have a hard time defending themselves. Bullying is usually not a one-time event. It can happen over and over again. So this project relates to bullying, which is based on peer-to-peer interactions and not perpetrated by a person who's in a position of trust. Next slide, please.
So when we're talking about the overall aims of the project itself, the overall aim was to collect data on the prevalence and nature of senior-to-senior bullying in Ontario. It all began because people were contacting Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario and Sheridan College, the Centre for Elder Research, wanting strategies to how to deal with bullying between older adults. But there was nothing available. There was nothing that was evidence-based. The information was based on working with children, youth, and the workplace. So we really needed to get a firm handle of what it looked like bullying between older adults. So then we wanted to take this data to create a resource package. We call it the toolkit that outlines best practices for older adults and those working with older adults to stop bullying. What we've done so far to date, so the whole project from 2018 to now. To date, what we've done is we surveyed older adults in Ontario, specifically 683 older adults, 55 plus. And from this data, it was clear that bullying is occurring, and we really got a better understanding of what bullying behavior looks like amongst this population. Then we took the data and we brought the survey results to stakeholders. We did it in 4 full-day interactive workshops. And I know many of the people who attended those workshops are here today, and I want to thank you all for all the contributions that you made, because we went across Southern Ontario, and during these 4 workshops, we used the data and we brought it to people in order that they use their own relevant experience to generate important issues and provide practical ideas and points that we would need to address in the toolkit in order to clearly service this population. So once we did that, we were able to create the toolkit. It's solution, everybody's business, senior to senior bullying toolkit. Now, where we're at now is we're implementing it. We're in 2 of 8 sites, and the objective is to implement it in seniors' residences. So even though the toolkit and the strategies can be easily used within different community organizations, where we have received the funding to implement it is in seniors' residents themselves. So we're implementing it in the seniors' residences, and we're evaluating it and already improving upon the toolkit itself. So the current aims of the project, I'm going to hand that over to Dorothy.
Thank you. So again, implementing the toolkit in 8 seniors residences. So the retirement community, seniors housing, independent living is all included under that umbrella. Systematically evaluating the process described and strategies included in the toolkit as well, and using feedback from stakeholders, as Kirsten had mentioned, at the 8 implementation sites, and making modifications to the toolkit, which we'll discuss further today as well, and making further recommendations on how to expand on the toolkit as well. Next slide, please. So toolkit aims prevent and target bullying behaviors between older adults. This includes strategies and activities designed to target bullying behaviors and enhance living well together. And these are based on survey results, as well as stakeholder feedback. So those think tanks that Kirsten was talking about, and existing best practices. And it's available to everyone through the Sheridan website, and the URL is located there. I believe we'll also provide that at the end as well, but it will be, it's on the Sheridan website and the Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario website as well. There we go. Oh, sorry, back one. So thanks to Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario, we were also able to have it translated into French. So thank you very much for that. What a huge help. And this French version is also available on the Sheridan website and the Elder Abuse Prevention website as well.
So now on to the intended audience. So basically the intended audience for this toolkit is senior leadership teams, because it's really important that the senior leadership teams encourage this initiative, because our survey clearly showed that bullying behavior happens. But it's important to address these behaviors in order that people can live well together. And when I use the term live well together, that's something that we have snatched from our dear colleagues at Sherbrooke University and the GIFT project, where they're emphasizing very much the living well together. So you'll see that incorporated in also in our vocabulary, living well together. We tend to say, though, community building, because that's the language that our residents have brought forward as the words that they would like to use. So targeting bullying behavior, preventing bullying behavior, and community building. The other intended audience is staff volunteers from senior residences and organizations. Really, the more people that are involved, the better. Because if everybody's involved, we start to change the ethos within organizations in order to create this environment. Clients are also an intended audience, because the more people that take ownership, the better. And when I go through specific aspects of the toolkit again, you're really going to see how the older adults are active participants in the whole process. That's what is key. Coordinators and facilitators. So in the toolkit, there's different activities that are set up, and these activities are geared toward addressing the needs of the facilitators. In fact, they're set up in such a way that they're created like a lesson plan. So we've had students who have been able to use the toolkit in order to implement different strategies and activities within placements, so that they could actually already starting engaging with the material. But that's for another conversation with regard to the toolkit and curriculum. What we're going to focus in on is implementing in the 8 residential sites. So the toolkit layout itself, it's modular. There's an online version that is available through Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario and through the Sheridan website. There's also in-print versions available. You can easily download it and print it out. It was designed that way. So Parker Benke, they designed it in a way that it could be easily negotiated online as well as in print. Each module includes clear aims. an introduction to each module, specific activities that can be done in relation to them that are clearly laid out like a lesson plan. Also included are templates. So the different types of handouts that you can use, that you could use for a basis that you could build on. And at the end, there's resources that are made available to people to, if issues do come up in other areas as well. So let's get to the toolkit itself. I'll give you a little bit of an overview of the different modules. The first module relates to policy and procedure. And this is an anchor. Research shows this is key to any initiative when working with bullying. And it should be developed by the site or organization. It needs to be developed from what the people that it's actually servicing so that they show ownership. And it links to existing policies and procedures so that people don't have a million of them all over the place and it just sort of gets lost in the paperwork. What is a policy and procedure? A policy is a document with a clear statement about the organization's position on bullying behavior, why this policy is developed, and who it applies to. There's a clear operational definition for what bullying is, so people really understand what it is. And then the procedure is clearly outlining the actions that need to take place in order that the policy can get rolled out. And it needs to be alive and updated. The next module is on discussion and education. So in the next slide, you can see discussion and education, which is the aim of this. If you could please move to the, so the aim of this is awareness raising and clarification as to what bullying is. So people are really clear on what it is and how it differs from criminal activities, which can be reported to the police, and elder abuse, which again can be reported. It is designed to get people thinking about the behaviors and to also reflect on their own behaviors. Activities include safe studies and illustrations from diverse points of view. What we've already found is that during awareness raising is when there are huge aha moments. We have found that people will often realize, while they're talking about bullying behavior and learning to define it, they realize that they're actually engaging these behaviors themselves and how toxic the behaviors are to the environment. So this is really important because it also sparks discussion. And people start to think about how they could do things differently to prevent toxic environments. The next module is response training. And that came up clearly as a request during the survey and the different think tanks. And here we think about strategies and activities at addressing bullying behaviors. So it's broken down into 3 sections: targets of bullying behavior, witnesses, who are incredibly important because oftentimes people who see it don't think it's their business. Hence why we say it's everybody's business. But if you don't speak up, then you're condoning it. If you don't say anything against it, you're saying, oh, that's okay. So it's really important with regard to the allies. Another is alternatives to bullying behavior. And this is something that we're really having to work through a lot because obviously people aren't going to want to attend a session that is alternatives to bullying behavior because then they feel that they might be outed. So we incorporate this response training into other workshops, but I'll talk about that a bit later. Now, the final module, creating a positive environment. Here, so in the next slide, here it's clearly laid out what the aims are, that it builds on existing best practice and activity ideas. This is in line with our colleagues at Sherbrooke and the GIFT Project. A real focus on targeting bullying and enhancing living well together. There's also, as you can see in the next slide, there's templates. So there are templates on comfort agreements. Basically, a lot of times there's some really rich discussions that happen in workshops. So to set up comfort agreements, where people have agreements on how they're going to behave and interact with each other, is really a helpful activity. We have examples of incident reports, examples of templates for policy and procedures, and posters themselves. Now, implementation site requirements. Here we get to the next slide. And thanks to NSERC, so the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada, we have funding to implement and evaluate this toolkit in 8 residential settings across the GTA and Halton. Currently, we're in 2 sites. Originally in 2020, we had hoped that it would be right across Southern Ontario, but the funding remains the same as it was, so we've had to scale back to keep it into the location of the GTA and the Halton region. The requirements for the implementation sites during this evaluation project is a survey, so a pre-post survey, because that's part of our deliverable to the research funders is we want to see, did this actually reduce bullying behavior? But another important thing about the survey, especially the pre-survey, is it provides an environmental scan to the organization to have a clear understanding of what's happening specifically on the ground in that site. And we have found that between the 2 sites we've already gone into, the behaviors are different, the locations are different, the natures are different. And this is important when choosing which modules. One of the modules that is required is a policy and procedure. The reason being is that every bullying initiative has found that this is a keystone to success in bullying interventions. But it needs to be through the ownership of that site. It can't just be something that a government organization sets up a policy and procedure and just hands it over. It takes a long time to go through this, and we're finding that during this policy and procedure development procedure, you're also having these great aha moments where people are starting to work through issues about how they can engage in behaviors differently. The other thing is using these survey results. So the Sheridan researchers do the survey collection and they analyze the data and then provide the data back and the summaries back to the sites. So the sites can look at this, be provided with this information, and then use this in order to choose which modules and activities that they want at their site. What's really important is that after this initiative is over, and the Sheridan research group pulls back, that it's actually sustainable. So to do this, we're operating from a train the trainer model. So that there is a liaison that has been identified with each site, and the liaison person attends the different workshops so that they will be able to carry on with the activities once the evaluation portion is over. As you can see in the next slide, there is a time frame. So we still, if an agency would like to be part of the research project, we still have some positions available. But just to let you know that it takes approximately 12 months because there's 1 month of preparation with regard to meetings and the survey itself. And then there's 10 months of implementing the strategies and activities, but that can also vary. Some sites may want that pulled out longer. And 1 month to evaluate the surveys and the outcomes, and then also to ask for feedback with regards to recommendations for improving the Seniors Anti-bullying Toolkit. We're actually, as we're going, we're also already collecting that information. As you can see from the next slide, we are in 2 of our implementation sites already. One of those sites we're halfway through, and the other one we're just starting the initiative, but things are really starting to come out. So if you are from a resident and you're interested in perhaps being part of this project, then you can contact Lisa Francis, our research manager extraordinaire, and her information will be included at the end of this PowerPoint. So I'm going to move on to special consideration specific for this project, because I've been working in the area of bullying since the 90s in multiple areas with children and youth and adults in the workplace, so various different areas. But there needs to be special consideration to this particular population. One thing is that it's participant centered, and that's just not lip service, but really older adults have incredible experience that can contribute to the initiatives and the activities themselves. In fact, on one of our sites, we had a person who was in a senior position of human resources before she retired, and she's been able to give valuable feedback in improving the policy and procedure for that specific site. It is another thing that became incredibly clear is we're working in residences. This is these people's home. When children are bullied at school or in high school, or if bullying happens in the workplace, people can go home. They have respite from the experience. For the people that are living on these residences, every time they open up their door to their room or their suite or their apartment, this is where it's occurring. So it really, truly is vital that this be considered. There's an emphasis on developing strategies to respond themselves. These are not children, and they don't want to go running to the principal or to the teacher. And this is something that during our awareness raising session, which was really lovely, several people had stated that what they appreciate about the workshop in this initiative is that it's raising awareness and they're learning strategies themselves in order to respond to bullying. But that said, there still is this, the comfort zone is avenues of reporting. So if they're not able to actually respond to it effectively, they still have that avenue that they can report. Awareness raising, that allows for reflection, because this is also very much a specific consideration for this population. It's often ingrained in how people behave. And more so than other populations, they may not be aware that what they are actually doing is bullying behavior, because it's become part and parcel of the way they behave. So it really, during these awareness raising sessions, it allows for these incredible aha moments. Diversity is very important when we're thinking of this population and a respect for that. And I'm not just talking about culture. I'm talking about a multitude of different things, including life experiences. Also, what they like. Do they want things that are more hands-on craft, which Dorothy will speak to, which she is the rock star in that area, or things that are more discussion-based and lifelong learning and academic, problem solving? There are a multitude of different things and engaging people where their interests and where their skill sets are. Another big thing that's come up is manipulative communication styles. So traditionally, when we talk about communication styles, we talk in the US and Canadian context, aggressive communication styles, passive communication styles, passive aggression, and the assertive one, which is the gold standard. But in the United Kingdom, they've identified the manipulative communication style. And this is something we're drawing now into our strategies, getting people to become aware of this communication style and the message that it sends to others. Because oftentimes these behaviors are ingrained. We also know that, especially for this group, the reasons why they often engage in these behaviors is in order to gain control or power, to get people to do things the way that it's always been done or the way it should be done. It's also in relation to resources. Now, moving forward to the lessons learned. This is incredible. Like I said, it's only early days, but we have been completely blown away at what we're learning. one of the things that we're learning is that with this population, bullying behavior is often the symptom of something else. So there's larger issues at play. For example, addictions. So people really need to be prepared to respond when things start to come up with regard to responding to these larger issues. Scheduling is something hugely important. We were very aware of it. We really thought in terms of the time of day and the length, but really what's also important is potential conflicts. And also things in terms of, it might not even be a conflict, but certain times of the day, people are more tired than other times of the day, when certain activities are more appropriate. We address diversity, but it has become more and more and more on the forefront, because it is not just about cultural diversity. It is not just about gender and sex, but it is also about the lived experiences and what people enjoy. So for some sites, people really embrace crafting and role playing, and other people really just want to have an academic conversation. So that's important to think about, again, the participant centered. The online world is also a huge new frontier with new challenges. And we are so blessed again to have one of our sites. They had, unfortunately, they already were dealing with these issues before the initiative actually started. So one of the things that they did was they brought in a consultant in order to look at how to respond to these issues. And a simple thing that came up was that if bullying behavior is happening through emails in relation to an association, make sure that there is only one association centralized email, that everybody is very transparent. If you're emailing about this group, you're emailing to a group email, and you're not targeting one person, but you're very much exposed, and you have that accountability for how you're actually emailing. Another thing is community building. Like I said, this is something that is really come to the forefront, is building community. And also one of the things that has come up is that when there is conflict, if people want to actually share the conflict, that shows that they care. And if they want to engage in conflict management, that shows that they care. So this is an area we're really working towards. Alternative behaviors. Again, the whole idea is you're advertising to an audience where they can choose to go to which workshops they want to or not. And if a workshop is alternative behaviors for bullying behavior, you obviously know that what that means, and people don't necessarily want to be outed. So as such, we're creating creative strategies for including these activities and other workshops with other labels. Finally, conflict management is huge. One really small example of this is the idea that we've had a situation where the targets of the behavior and people who are engaging in it are together in one group, and then the targets are very quiet and they don't want to participate in the workshop. So we're thinking of creative ways of separating out the groups so that people are more comfortable with certain activities, but again, making sure that everybody is welcome. Because something that people often had said before when we were just starting the initiative was, how are we going to get people who are engaging in bullying behaviors to come? Obviously, people who are the target are going to come, or people who are upset about it because their friend is being bullied, but people who are engaging in the behavior. So it's very important that it becomes a whole residence initiative with a focus on targeting the behavior and living well together. Now, with that said, we are truly, truly blessed that one of our sites is the Bob Rumble Center of the Canadian Center of Excellence for the Deaf. Not only are they one of our sites, but they are also a key research partner. And in the early days, we were going to have a facilitator. We were hiring for a facilitator who was fluent in American Sign Language. Then it became apparent that we really needed to privilege somebody who was a strong facilitator, because this area really, we want to develop further the toolkit so that it is very much targeting and supporting also the deaf community. And with that said, we are so lucky that we have managed to find Dorothy, because since she has joined this team, she has blown me away. And one of the things is, upon starting her work at the Bob Renfel Center, I have been so impressed at how she is working so hard to communicate in American Sign Language and communicate with people in an authentic way. So she is the best person to discuss the lessons learned in this area.
Thanks, Kirsten. So, like it says, we're just scratching the surface for this community. But it's really important to understand that these participants, a lot of them, ASL is their first and only language. So, speaking English to them or the written words, it's not going to be, a slated, we're going to have closed captioning for this and everything will be solved. That's not the case. Even though within the language itself, there are nuanced diversities. But definitely it's not like a direct translation. When I was there, I was trying to use regular ASL, and I'm thinking, uh-oh, they're using their colloquial speak a little bit. And so it's definitely not a direct translation from like the slide deck that we would be using for awareness raising to exactly what's going to be said. So again, like huge importance for the ASL interpreters, and we're so grateful for them, because without them, we wouldn't be able to conceptualize any of this and really translate it to this community that's in really big need. So yeah, so where else? So the tasks within the workshops, we also have to consider the activities that they align and encourage artistic abilities, hands-on activities, as Kirsten was describing, as opposed to activities that focus on the spoken word. There's also more role playing that's tied in, but it's also important to understand that, this group has amazing, huge strengths. I made sure in my last workshop to arrive early and to have like some downtime with the participants just casually before the workshop. And their sense of humor is incredible. They're so open to teaching. And when I was trying to communicate with them, I kept apologizing and saying, I'm so sorry, I'm just learning, I'm trying, but it's so hard. And they were so patient with me. They took the time, they explained things to me, they signed, they corrected my sign language. And I count it as such a privilege to be an outsider that's being invited into this community, and to be able to experience their strengths and how generous they are in just teaching me and having that patience with me. One of the things that came up at this site was it's confidentiality. As we can see from the ASL interpreters, we're using our hands. So to have a private conversation with somebody, you can see it. So we identified the need to have more opportunity for one-on-one. So we have more time they have more time to express themselves in a more closed environment. And also it's been increasingly obvious that there's a huge lack of resources for the deaf community. There's an assumption, again, that when something's closed captioned, it's accessible to the deaf, but it's not written in ASL, it's written in English. And oftentimes they don't speak English, they speak ASL. So it's important to understand that there's a big difference when you're it's a bimodal mode of communication, and to write it down takes the authenticity away from the actual language. So again, really huge importance. There is the need for the translators and how grateful we are for them.
Thank you so much, Dorothy. So the next is some of the keys to success that we're finding are incredibly important for a successful initiative. One is teamwork. It's not just about scheduling with regard to teamwork, but it's also sharing information. So as Dorothy had said, there's downtime at the beginning and there's downtime at the end. And if one of the facilitators from the Sheridan project actually finds out about something that needs to be shared with the liaison, it is. Also, the liaisons are sharing with us too, anything that's happening. So that's on our radar so that we can tailor activities and workshops to what's actually happening. There needs to be clear, complete advertising. So it isn't just about the when and the location, but what the focus and the aims are, the specific times, how long it's going to take. Is it a repeat workshop? One of our sites is absolutely huge, so we'll run the same workshop at multiple times. We do have the cheerleaders who will show up to multiple workshops that are a repeat, but in all fairness to the participants themselves, so that they know exactly what's happening, that it's very clear and complete. Also key are the firecrackers, aka the cheerleaders. You have those people within a site that really are rooting for the project itself and getting others on board and talking about the project and finding people that might necessarily not attend a workshop but do. And also talk it up. The informal time is really important as well, because this allows people to process themselves and to discuss things and have aha moments. And again, inclusion. Everybody's welcome. Because oftentimes, unless it's the person who's being bullied, they'll say things, well, I see it, but it's really not my business. Why would I go? So the idea that everybody, it's very clear that it's about building community and living well together, and that allies are an essential component because they support the people who are the target. They also can speak out against it, because by not speaking out against it, you're sending the message that it's okay. Now, in the next slide, I want to first point out the fact that the toolkit that is loaded on the Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario site and the Sheridan site are the toolkits that we're implementing right now, that version of the toolkit. Again, it's available in English and it's available in French. As we're working through this implementation process, we're making modifications to the toolkit. These modifications and additions will be available at the end of the project. So at the end, the project's ending this phase of it in December of 2025. So we're looking at the beginning of 2026 to put a updated version of the toolkit once we've had a chance to put all the modifications in place. But as I said, we're already working on modifications. One of the modifications is really building upon community building. So though it's not in the toolkit itself, we're still available to communicate with. There'll be contacts at the end for Lisa Francis and myself, and we can make suggestions and also let people know about some of the things that we're doing. A big modification is acceptance and respect for differences. Hence, we've included, so we're developing a whole section within the toolkit on differences in communication styles and how that impacts interaction with people. Because one person may have a very aggressive way of communicating because that's what they were modeled to do to be successful in the workplace. But the recipient of this aggressive communication sees it as very hostile and aggressive, and it's very intimidating for them. So it's the idea that people start to also understand how they're communicating. So some additions to this toolkit is this communication styles training. that we're incorporating. And it's not just differences with regards to cultural differences and how people communicate and how the message that sends. So in certain sites where you have people from diverse cultural contexts, in one culture, staring somebody directly in the eye shows that you're interested. Others, staring somebody directly in the eye means that you're aggressive and hostile. The other thing too that we've added is awareness raising. So a specific example within there is heart maps. And this was in response to the deaf community. So it's very much a hands-on activity. And we also know from an awareness raising perspective, people may not necessarily be aware of the behavior they're engaging in, but they know how it feels when it happens to them. So heart maps, simple exercise. People pick a pencil crayon to match with a feeling, and then they color within the heart how they feel when they're the target of bullying or when they see it. And then they can see the predominant colors in the heart. Much more is on building a positive community, and I'm going to hand that over to Dorothy to discuss.
Thank you. So the building a positive environment segment of the toolkit, that section, I've added the activity positive postering. So basically this is a crafting activity that uses imagery and positive verbiage to visually illustrate positive messaging on posters created by these residents that are then put on display in the common areas throughout the residence. And I mean, it's fun. They have a lot of fun doing this. It ties in art and it ties in community building. So, and another example of something I've added to the toolkit are the community building events. So for example, I'm going to be doing a session next week that features New Year's resolutions, and it's called Generating Values for a Caring Community. The aim is to generate tasks to do kind things for each other so that these things people can do, they align with enhancing and building community at the residence. It's also important to note that we're going to be creating ASL video clips to be made available to the public and to accompany the toolkit as well. They'll be made available through the Sheridan website, the Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario website, and as well as the Bob Rumble Canadian Centre of Excellence for the Deaf website. Oh, Kirsten, you're muted.
Thank you. So finally, we've got our contact information sheet to end with and to open up with regard to any questions and answers. So I'm going to open up the forum to if there's, I don't know if Rayanne's going to be looking through and yes, I think it's Rayanne who will be providing us with the questions. Hi, Rayanne.
Hello, sorry. Thank you again
No,
for that
don't be sorry.
great presentation. That's was excellent overview of the project and the initiative and outcomes that have been completed to date. I'm just looking to see if there's one question. I'm just going through. There was just sort of a comment and just a generalization around some of the systemic bullying. And does this toolkit talk about systemic bullying, like within the organization versus actual individuals?
And that's a very important question that has been raised because that goes beyond the purview of the strategies themselves. The strategies themselves are actually designed to deal with peer-to-peer bullying and not things within the larger organization. But that said, if you are working on strategies to deal with peer-to-peer bullying, it overflows into different areas where organizations and all those people involved start to look at what's actually, some of the behaviors that are happening that promote this. So that just happened to be a positive additional outcome that even though the target is peer to peer, because the more people involved, the better, it all works towards creating a more positive environment and considering the environment itself. That's one of the things with regard to the toolkit. We really had to focus in on a specific population. The toolkit itself is Older adults with dementia or cognitive issues, this is beyond the purview of the project, as said before. But that said, if we have participants who do have cognitive impairments, they are still invited to come into the workshop. It's just a matter of, and we do cater so that they can actually still participate in activities. But the strategies themselves are not targeting people, are not with a focus on people who have a cognitive impairment. So aggression as a result of Alzheimer's, that's beyond the purview of this particular toolkit.
Okay.
So when we talk, there's so much to go. There's so much.
There was a comment just asking that as you were going through the presentation that the person comment, I'm thinking more and more that this is more retirement living rather than long-term care settings that you're looking for.
Yes, it is. Because of the target population. So the fact that people with memory impairments, this is beyond the purview of this specific strategy itself.
Okay.
At this stage, yes.
Right. Okay.
Ideally, people will run with this and start to, we're about sharing. That's why, Rayanne, we're a good partnership. Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario is about sharing and getting information out so that people can build upon things and not hoarding information.
Right. Thank you. I don't see any other comments right now. I'm just going to put in that we a couple fact sheets. Actually, they're on our website, which I did post earlier in the chat box, but I'll repost them on when I post the recording. So in March, February, month are we in, is also Pink Bullying Day. So often we don't talk about older adults when we think about bullying. It's more of the youth, as you think we've mentioned. So in collaboration with the Canadian Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse, we adapted a fact sheet on bullying in older adults too, that we'll look at updating and get that out in our social media as well, because, we do try to, get people aware that this is a issue that affects people from all ages. And if anybody else has any resources that they like to share. The only other question I had, maybe you could comment on, is the work that you've been doing with other partners or learned from other partners. I know we have Roxanne from Quebec who's joining us, who also been doing, we just had them recently do a webinar on their gift program on, bullying behaviors, kind of that in retirement residents. So other outreach or other partners that you're working with or learning from in terms of the research that you're doing?
So one of the things really from the perspective is that strictly speaking with regard to bullying behavior, there are in older adults, there isn't a lot. It's still quite new, this particular area. But with regard to engaging others, that means also having conversations with people from the LGBTQ plus community and how they could use this type of information. So it's a more of sending out. Who we are quite close with is, as I had said, with regard to Roxanne and the GIFT project, because there is very much a beautiful synergy between the two groups. And it's wonderful that it's a Canadian perspective, that it is two Canadian groups that are able to work together and have conversations together. We are starting to also make connections in Europe where this is becoming part of the radar. The idea of older adults engaging in bullying behavior, it's one of those things. This was way back when, in 2018, when I did a talk at one of our residents, and I had one woman stand up and she said, you people are really smart. How did you not know that bullying behavior was happening with older adults? Why would you think it wouldn't be happening with us? You should have been here already. So that sends a really, really clear message, and it resonates in my head when she had said that, and I never forget that. So it's still early days, especially with regard to evidence-based strategies. But if there are other people that are working on projects, please contact us too, so that we can all work together to share information with each other.
Great. There's just one last comment and then we'll kind of go to the last slides. Oh, now we're getting help other people. Was adult shunning discussed as a bullying tactic?
Yes. So
Okay.
people get shunned, and it happens, and that's something that we could speak to for at a huge different level. The idea of shunning somebody with regard to a multitude of reasons, with regard to ability, with regard to age, even with regard to, as Dorothy would, if she was unmuted, she would say, differences in how ASL people communicate. So you have groups of people who do it in a very academic communication form, or those who do it more from a contextual form. One group will shun the other group with regard to it or exclude them. So as you get older, you become just so much better at it and so much more nuanced. And one of the things that we do know is one of the reasons why people engage in this behavior is they try to get people to behave the way they want them to.
Mhm.
Bullying behavior is a mechanism for getting you to do something that somebody wants, to conforming to the larger group. So shunning has been huge coming up. And that's where the whole idea of inclusivity has become so important. Thank you to whoever brought that up.
The last question before we wrap up is around work with First Nations. Was there any individuals from First Nations maybe involved in the toolkit, or I'm just trying to think back when we did the focus groups.
Yes. So you remember we had in focus groups, we had people that were involved, which were so, their input was so valuable with regard to different ideas. And alas, this is one of the areas that people can reconnect with, which would be really great. To also think in terms of activities that would be specific and in line, be more culturally appropriate for those particular groups as well, that can really tap into that pride and those type of ways of being and doing. But with regard to, so there was feedback that came during the focus groups. There were activities like circle sharing is one of the activities that's listed in there, that you really see that where that would have come from and which stakeholders would have recommended these things. But more can be done. Really, more activities can be done. More activities can be formulated. Things that are more in line with the diversity represented across the province.
Great, thank you. So I'm just going to wrap up because I know we're just at 2 o'clock and people do have to leave. Just a reminder, EAPO continues to do a lot of webinars, and just keep posted. We post them in our newsletter. We do have a course coming up for those who are doing frontline intervention on risk of harm evaluation. So those who are doing want to learn more about how to do risk assessments, we have a 3-day training course coming up. So you can go to our website and learn more about that. Again, just as a reminder, to do their survey. We do have a webinar coming up next week on looking at mental health of older adults and issues around suicide. It's an interactive play, and we only have a certain amount of seats for that because we do unmute people and have discussions with the actors that do portray the skits that they do. So if you're interested, please check out our website for those and other upcoming webinars as well. So thank you all. Thank you, Dorothy and Kirsten and Lisa, for joining us, and our ASL interpreters as always. If anybody has any questions, I know we can't get to everything, but we do appreciate everyone coming today, and we will make an effort to get this posted hopefully later today or tomorrow up on our website. So thank you again, and have a great day, everybody. We'll see you soon.